How 6,000 Scots shattered an army of 20,000 English. The astonishing story of Bannockburn. 1314. June 1314. The edge of the Scottish Highlands. A modest force of weary, poorly equipped peasants and warriors faces one of the most formidable military machines in Europe. On one side, 6,000 Scots under Robert the Bruce, the king without a kingdom. On the other, 20,000 English soldiers, including the most feared, heavily armored knights on the continent. The English are superior in numbers, equipment, and experience. A Scottish victory seems impossible. Yet, in 2 days, one of the greatest military upsets of the Middle Ages will unfold here. This is the story of Bannockburn. To understand why this battle was so significant, we need to go back a few years. Scotland was no longer an independent kingdom. King Edward I of England, called the Hammer of the Scots, had brutally subjugated the land. Scottish nobles had to swear loyalty to him. Those who refused were executed. The legendary William Wallace had tried to resist, but he too ended up on the gallows, drawn and quartered and displayed as a warning. Scotland seemed lost. But then Robert the Bruce entered the stage, a Scottish nobleman with a claim to the crown. In 1306, he murdered a rival in a church, a sacrilege that nearly cost him everything. But instead of fleeing, he had himself crowned King of Scotland. The English laughed. A king without land, without an army, excommunicated by the church. But Bruce did not give up. Year after year, he recaptured castle after castle. He waged a guerrilla war, avoided open battles, wore down the English occupiers. By 1314, he controlled almost all of Scotland. Only one important fortress still held out: Stirling Castle. Stirling was the key to Scotland. Whoever controlled Stirling controlled the main route between the Northern Highlands and the south. Bruce's brother Edward besieged the castle for months. Finally, he struck a deal with the English commander. If no English army came to the rescue by the 24th of June, the castle would be surrendered. It was a trap, but not for the Scots. When King Edward II of England heard of this agreement, he had no choice. He could not allow such an important fortress to fall without a fight. It would be a humiliation. So he gathered the largest army England had assembled in years. 20,000 men, 2,500 heavy cavalry, the elite of English military power. 3,000 Welsh longbowmen whose arrows could pierce armor, and thousands of infantry. This army marched north, confident they would crush the Scottish rebellion once and for all. Robert the Bruce knew exactly what was coming, and he prepared. He chose his battlefield carefully. A narrow strip of land between the Bannockburn, a small river, and the dense forests of New Park. The English could not deploy their superior numbers here. Their cavalry could not outflank. Bruce had his men dig thousands of small holes covered with branches and grass, invisible death traps for horses. He trained his soldiers in a formation called the schiltron, circles of men bristling with 3-meter-long spears like human hedgehogs. Against cavalry, these formations were nearly impenetrable. On the 23rd of June, the English arrived. What happened next became legend. An English knight named Henry d'Aubigné spotted Robert the Bruce riding ahead of his troops, armed only with a battle axe mounted on a small horse. D'Aubigné saw his chance for glory. He lowered his lance and charged. The King of Scotland on his small pony rode toward one of the most feared knights in England. At the last moment, Bruce swerved aside. As d'Aubigné thundered past, Bruce stood in his stirrups and brought his axe down. The blow split d'Aubigné's helmet and skull in two. The axe handle shattered from the impact. Silence. Then the Scots roared. Their king had just killed an English champion in single combat. Morale soared. That night, the English commanders debated. Some wanted to wait, rest the troops, find a better position. But King Edward was impatient. The deadline for Stirling was the next day. He ordered the attack for the morning. It would prove to be a fatal mistake. On the 24th of June at dawn, the English army advanced. They had to cross the Bannockburn and squeeze through the narrow terrain. The heavy cavalry led, as always. They expected the Scots to flee, as they always had against mounted knights. But the Scots did not flee. The schiltrons held. The first wave of English cavalry crashed into a wall of spears. Horses screamed, fell through their riders. The knights behind could not stop in time and rode into the chaos. More horses stumbled into the hidden pits. Riders in full armor, once fallen, could not get up. The English archers tried to help, but the terrain was so narrow, the army so close, that they could not shoot without hitting their own men. Their arrows often struck their own soldiers. Bruce had held back his 500 light cavalry. Now he sent them against the archers. Without support from the heavy cavalry, which was stuck in the chaos, the archers fled. Hour after hour, the English army pressed together on the narrow strip. At the front, men fought desperately against the spear walls. Behind, thousands more pushed forward, unable to fight. The heat was unbearable. Men in full armor collapsed from exhaustion. The dead piled so high that one had to climb over mountains of corpses. Then came the moment that decided everything. Bruce had held back a reserve, the men of Argyll under Angus Og. Fresh troops. He threw them into the battle. At the same time, a new group appeared on the hill. It was the Scottish baggage train, servants and camp followers armed with whatever they could find. They looked like another army. For the exhausted English, it was too much. Someone shouted, "Treason!" Others screamed, "Retreat!" Panic spread. King Edward was dragged away by his bodyguards almost by force. His army collapsed. What was supposed to be an orderly retreat became a rout. Men threw away their weapons, their armor, anything that slowed them down. They plunged into the Bannockburn, trying to swim to the other side. Many drowned under the weight of their equipment. Others were cut down by the pursuing Scots. The slaughter was terrible. Entire noble families of England were wiped out. Over 4,000 English soldiers died that day. Many more were captured, including dozens of nobles. The ransoms Bruce collected financed his kingdom for years. The Scots had fewer than 500 dead. Bannockburn was more than just a battle. It was proof that England was not invincible, that discipline and tactics could defeat superiority in numbers and equipment. Robert the Bruce was now undeniably King of Scotland. England tried for years to reconquer Scotland, but after Bannockburn, the momentum was broken. In 1328, England officially recognized Scottish independence in the Treaty of Edinburgh.